In the quiet town of Black Hollow, Pennsylvania, nestled among ancient oaks and forgotten farmhouses, stood Willow House. It was a grand Victorian relic, its gabled roof sagging under the weight of time, its once vibrant paint peeling like dead skin. The locals avoided it, whispering of strange lights in the windows and cries in the night. To Clara Monroe, a 29-year-old graphic designer fleeing a broken engagement in Philadelphia, it was a stealer chance to start over in a place where no one knew her name. She bought the house sight unseen in the summer of 2025, drawn by its low price and the promise of solitude. Clara arrived on a humid June evening, her SUV packed with boxes and a heart heavy with regret. The air was thick with the scent of honeysuckle as she stepped onto the creaking porch. The realtor had warned her about the house's history, but Clara dismissed it as small-town gossip. She wasn't here for ghost stories. She was here to rebuild. Inside the house was a maze of dusty rooms and faded wallpaper. The staircase spiraled upward, its banister carved with intricate roses that seemed to watch her as she explored. In the parlor, she found an old upright piano, its keys yellowed but intact. She pressed one, and a low, mournful note echoed, startling her. "Just needs tuning," she muttered, shaking off the unease that night. Clara slept in a sleeping bag on the living room floor. The movers delayed until morning. She dreamed of a woman in a white dress, her face obscured, standing at the edge of a misty forest. The woman reached out, her fingers cold as ice, and whispered, "You're not alone." Clara woke with a start, her breath visible in the chilly air despite the summer heat. She checked her phone. 3:13 a.m. The house was silent, but the darkness felt alive, pressing against her skin. The next day, she threw herself into unpacking, determined to ignore the dream. But strange things began to happen. Her sketchbooks would be opened to pages she hadn't touched, filled with drawings of a woman's face pale, with hollow eyes and a sad smile. The piano played single notes when no one was near it, always the same haunting melody at night. Clara heard footsteps pacing the upstairs hallway, though the floorboards above were bare and untouched. Desperate for answers, Clara visited the Black Hollow Library, a squat brick building run by Mrs. Evelyn Carter, a retiree with a penchant for local law. Evelyn's eyes widened when Clara mentioned Willow House. "You're living there?" she asked, pulling out a binder labeled Town History. She flipped to a yellowed newspaper clipping from 1897. It told of Eleanor Voss, a young woman who lived in Willow House with her husband, Thomas, a lumber baron. Eleanor was found dead in the attic, her wrist slit, though some claimed she'd been murdered. Thomas vanished soon after, and the house had been cursed ever since. "Folks say Eleanor's still there," Evelyn said, lowering her voice. "She loved a man before Tomasa, poet named Samuel. They were engaged, but her family forced her to marry Thomas for his money. Samuel died of a broken heart, and Eleanor, well, she never got over him." Clara's stomach twisted. She'd come to Black Hollow to escape a failed love story, not to live in someone else's, but the parallels were eerie. Her ex-fiancé Brian had left her for someone else, shattering her trust. She thanked Evelyn and returned home, determined to ignore the story. Yet that night, the dreams intensified. Eleanor appeared again, her face clearer now, her eyes pleading. "Find him," she whispered, pointing to a locket Clara didn't recognize. The next morning, Clara found the locket in a dusty drawer in the attic. It was silver, heart-shaped, with a faded photograph of a young man inside. The inscription read, 2E, forever yours. As Clara's heart raced. Was this Samuel? She began researching online, scouring digitized archives for any mention of Samuel, the poet. She found a single reference in an 1895 literary journal. Samuel Harper, a local poet who died of tuberculosis the year Eleanor married Thomas. His final poem, For My Lost Love, was published posthumously. Clara tracked down a copy. My heart is hers, though worlds divide. In willow shade, I'll wait beside. Clara's breath caught. The poem felt like a message, a tether across time. She began to feel Eleanor's presence everywhere, in the scent of lavender that lingered in the air, in the soft hum of a lullaby she couldn't place. One night, as she sat sketching the locket, the piano began to play on its own, the melody from her dreams. Clara followed the sound to the parlor, where the keys moved as if pressed by invisible hands. She felt a chill, then a warmth, like a hand resting on her shoulder. I'm trying, she whispered, unsure if she was speaking to Eleanor or herself, driven by a mix of fear and curiosity. Clara decided to hold a seance. She'd never believed in ghosts, but Eleanor's story felt too real to ignore. She invited Mia, a barista from the local coffee shop who dabbled in tarot, and Jake, a handyman who'd been fixing her porch and seemed unfazed by the house's reputation. They sat in a circle in the parlor, candles flickering, a Ouija board. Between them, Clara clutched the locket, her voice trembling as she called out, Eleanor, are you here? The planchette moved slowly, spelling out YEs. Mia gasped, but Jake remained skeptical. Ask her what she wants, he said. Clara's fingers shook as she asked, what do you need, Eleanor? The planchette spelled out SMIU. Then, faster, Fiandi, HIM. The air grew heavy, the candles guttering. Clara's mind raced. Samuel was dead, how could she find him? But the locket felt warm in her hand, and she remembered the poem's line, in willow's shade, I'll wait. Beside the willow tree, there was an ancient willow in the backyard, its branches drooping like a mourner's veil. The next day, Clara began digging beneath the willow, her hands blistered from the shovel. Jake joined her, curious but silent. Hours later, they found it a wooden box, rotted but intact, buried shallowly in the earth. Inside was a bundle of letters, tied with a faded ribbon, and a small journal. The letters were from Samuel to Eleanor, each one a love poem, each one begging her to run away with him. The journal was Eleanor's, its pages filled with despair over her marriage and guilt over Samuel's death. The final entry read, I cannot live without him. If I must die, let it be here, where he waits. Clara wept as she read, her own heartbreak echoing Eleanor's. She felt a connection to this woman, bound by love and loss across a century. That night, she placed the letters and journal beneath the willow, lighting a candle beside them. Eleanor, she said softly, I found him. You're free. The air shimmered, and for a moment, Clara saw her Eleanor, radiant in her white dress, smiling as a shadowy figure took her hand. Then they were gone. The house felt lighter after that. The piano stayed silent, the footsteps ceased, and Clara's dreams were her own again. She kept the locket, wearing it as a reminder that love, even tragic, could endure. She began to heal, sketching again, finding beauty in Black Hollow's quiet streets. Willow House was no longer a place of ghosts, but a home where Clara could start anew, carrying Eleanor's story and her own into the future. Clara thought the nightmare was over, After unearthing Samuel's letters and Eleanor's journal beneath the willow tree, the oppressive weight of Willow House had lifted. The air no longer hummed with unseen presence, and the piano's eerie melodies had ceased. For a week, Clara slept soundly, her dreams free of spectral figures. She began to believe Eleanor and Samuel had found peace, their tragic love story finally resolved. But Black Hollow, Pennsylvania, held darker secrets. And Willow House was not done with her. It started with the mirror in the upstairs hallway. A heavy, ornate thing with a cracked frame. It had always unsettled Clara, its glass cloudy as if trapping fog. One night, as she passed it on her way to bed, she caught a glimpse of movement, not her reflection, but a shadow, tall and angular, with eyes that glowed like dying embers. She froze, heart pounding, but when she looked again, it was gone. Just tired, she told herself, though sleep eluded her that night. The next morning, Clara found scratches on the mirror's frame, deep gouges that hadn't been there before. Her fingers traced the marks, and a chill ran through her, sharp and electric. She called Jake, the handyman, to check the house for structural issues, anything to explain the scratches. He found nothing but warned her about the town's whispers. Folks say Eleanor wasn't the only one who died here, he said, his usual easy grin absent. Thomas Voss, her husband, he didn't just vanish. Some think he's still in the house, angry as hell. Clara laughed it off, but Jake's words clung to her. That night, the temperature in the house plummeted, her breath clouding in the summer air. She heard it then, a low, guttural growl from the attic, like an animal, but worse, human in its malice. She grabbed a flashlight and crept upstairs, her pulse hammering. The attic door, which she'd kept locked, stood ajar, its hinges creaking in a non-existent breeze. Inside, the air was thick, sour with the stench of decay. Her flashlight beam caught something in the corner, a dark stain on the floorboards, spreading like spilled ink. As she stared, it pulsed, forming the shape of a man's silhouette, its edges writhing. Clara stumbled back, the flashlight slipping from her hand. The silhouette lunged, a rush of cold air slamming her against the wall. Invisible hands gripped her throat, squeezing until spots danced in her vision. She clawed at nothing, gasping, until the pressure vanished as suddenly as it came. She scrambled downstairs, locking herself in the kitchen, her phone trembling in her hands as she texted Mia, "I need you now." Now, but Mia arrived at dawn, her tarot deck and a bundle of sage in hand. "This isn't Eleanor," she said, her voice tight. She was sad, not violent. "This feels wrong." They burned the sage, its smoke curling through the house, but the growling only grew louder, now joined by a rhythmic thud, like a heartbeat. In the walls, Mia's cards, laid out on the parlor table, kept turning up the tower and the devil, symbols of chaos and malevolence. "Something's trapped here," Mia whispered. "Something that doesn't want you here." Despérate. Clara returned to the library. Evelyn, the librarian, paled when Clara described the silhouette. She pulled out another binder, this one marked unresolved. Inside was a police report from 1898, a year after Eleanor's death. It detailed rumors of Thomas Voss's return to Willow House, raving mad, claiming Eleanor's spirit had cursed him. He'd been seen digging in the backyard before disappearing again. A later note, scrawled in faded ink, mentioned a groundskeeper finding blood-soaked floorboards in the attic, but no body was ever found. Clara's stomach churned. Thomas, the man who'd forced Eleanor into a loveless marriage, who might have killed her, was he the shadow in the mirror, the force choking her in the attic. She remembered the stain, its pulsing shape. Back at the house, she and Mia searched the attic again, armed with salt and a crowbar. They pried up the floorboards, where the stain had appeared, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a rusted knife, its blade crusted with something dark, and a tattered journal page in a different hand Thomas's. It read, "She betrayed me. Her lover's filth taints this house. I'll bind them both, forever." The words sent a shiver. Through Clara, she felt watched, the air growing heavy again. The lights flickered, and the mirror in the hallway shattered, glass shards flying like shrapnel. Mia screamed as a shard grazed her arm, blood welling. The growling returned, now a roar, shaking the walls. Clara grabbed the knife and journal page, sprinting to the backyard with Mia close behind. Under the willow tree, they dug frantically, the ground seeming to resist, roots twisting like fingers. They found a second box, this one iron, etched with strange symbols that burned Clara's eyes to look at. Inside was a lock of hair, a vial of dried blood, and a photograph of Thomas, his eyes wild, his hands stained red. "He cursed them," Mia said, voice shaking. "He bound Eleanor and Samuel to this place, and himself with them." Clara's mind raced. She'd freed Eleanor by finding Samuel's letters, but Thomas's rage had lingered, growing stronger. The house itself seemed to pulse with his fury, windows rattling, the ground trembling beneath their feet. They burned the box's contents under the willow, chanting words Mia pieced together from her occult books. The air grew hotter, the growling deafening, until a scream not human, but something ancient and wrathful through the night. The willow's branches thrashed, and the ground split, a black mist rising before dissipating. Then, silence. The house stilled, the air warm. Again, the stench gone. Clara and Mia sat under the willow until dawn, shaken but alive. The knife and journal page were ash, the curse broken or so they hoped. Clara stayed in Willow House, but she never felt alone again. Sometimes, in the quiet, she'd catch a whiff of lavender, a reminder of Eleanor's gratitude. But at night, when the shadows grew long, she avoided the hallway mirror, its new glass too clear, too ready to reflect something that wasn't there. Clara thought the terror had ended. The burning of Thomas Voss's cursed relics beneath the willow tree had silenced the growling, stilled the trembling walls, and banished the black mist that had nearly consumed her and Mia. For a fleeting moment, Willow House felt like a home again, its air clean, its shadows ordinary. But in Black Hollow, Pennsylvania, the past never truly rests. And the darkness in Willow House was far from done with Clara. It began with the dreams. Not Eleanor's gentle visions, but nightmares of a voider, suffocating blackness where eyes burned like coals and a voice, low and venomous, hissed her name. Clara woke each night drenched in sweat, her bedroom freezing, the windows frosted over despite the July heat. She'd check her phone always, 3:13 a.m. and hear a faint scratching from the walls, like claws carving through wood. She told herself it was mice, but the sound followed her, growing louder when she entered the attic or lingered near the rebuilt hallway mirror. Mia, still shaken from the shard that had sliced her arm, refused to return to the house. "It's not over, Clara," she texted, her words laced with fear. Thomas's curse was strong, but something else is there, something older. Clara wanted to dismiss it, but the evidence was mounting. Her sketches, once filled with Eleanor's face, now showed grotesque images, twisted limbs, eyeless faces, and a figure that wasn't Thomas, but something inhuman, its form jagged and wrong. The drawings appeared overnight, her pencils scattered, her hands smudged with charcoal she didn't remember using. Desperate, Clara returned to Evelyn at the Black Hollow Library. The old librarian's hands trembled as she pulled out a leather-bound book, its pages brittle and smelling of mildew. "This predates the Vosses," Evelyn whispered, opening to a section on the land where Willow House stood. In 1840, before the house was built, the site was a ritual ground for a secretive group. Locals called them the Hollow Kin. They worshipped something they named the Beneath, a force said to feed on pain and bind souls to the earth. The book described blood offerings, symbols like those on Thomas's iron box, and a warning: disturbing the ground could wake what slept below. Clara's blood ran cold. The digging under the willow, the burning of the relics, it hadn't just freed Eleanor and Samuel. It had stirred something else. She drove back to Willow House, her heart pounding. The air inside was thick, the lights dimming as she entered. The scratching in the walls was now a relentless scraping, joined by a wet, gurgling sound, like something breathing through rot. She grabbed a flashlight and headed to the basement, a place she'd avoided since moving in. The door warped and heavy groaned as she forced it open, revealing a stone staircase descending into darkness. The basement smelled of earth and decay, the air so cold it burned her lungs. Her flashlight beam caught symbols carved into the wall spirals and jagged lines, identical to those on Thomas's box. At the far end, a crude altar of stacked stones glistened with a dark, viscous liquid that seemed to writhe. As she approached, the gurgling grew louder and the floor trembled. Her flashlight flickered, then died, plunging her into blackness. A voice not Thomas's, but deeper, ancient, spoke from all around. "You woke me," Clara screamed, stumbling back as the liquid on the altar surged, forming tendrils that lashed out, grazing her arm. The touch was fire and ice, leaving a burning welt. She ran, the stairs seeming to stretch endlessly, the voice laughing, promising she'd never leave. Upstairs, the house was alive, with malice doors slammed, windows shattered, and the mirror in the hallway pulsed with a sickly green light, showing not her reflection but a gaping maw filled with writhing shapes. She called Jake, her voice hoarse with panic. He arrived with a sledgehammer and a priest, Father Daniel, a grizzled man who'd heard the town's darkest tales. "This isn't a ghost," he said, clutching a crucifix. "It's a blight, something the Hollow Kin fed and Thomas woke with. His hate." They descended to the basement, Father Daniel chanting prayers, his voice shaking as the walls bled that same viscous ooze. Jake smashed the altar, each blow echoing like a scream. The air grew heavier, the voice roaring, "Mine." Tendrils erupted, wrapping around Jake's leg, dragging him toward the shattered altar. Clara grabbed his arm, pulling with all her strength, while Father Daniel splashed holy water, his prayers now shouts. The house shook, plaster falling as the tendrils retreated, the voice shrieking in rage. Clara spotted a crack in the basement floor, glowing faintly, and instinct took over. She pried it open with the sledgehammer, revealing a pit filled with bones, human, animal, and some too twisted to name. Father Daniel poured salt and holy water into the pit, chanting until his voice gave out. The ground convulsed, a final scream tearing through the house, then silence. They burned the bones in the backyard. Under the willow, the smoke thick and acrid. The house felt hollowed out, its menace gone, but Clara knew she couldn't stay. She moved to a motel that night, leaving Willow House to its ghosts and whatever lingered in the beneath. She kept the locket, a reminder of Eleanor's love, but also of the horror that love could awaken. Black Hollow's secrets were buried again, but Clara never forgot the voice or the eyes in the dark, watching, waiting for another soul to claim. Clara Monroe thought she'd escaped the nightmare of Willow House. After burning the cursed bones in the backyard and fleeing to a motel in Black Hollow, Pennsylvania, she believed the malevolent force that beneath had been banished. The air no longer carried the stench of decay, and the scratching in the walls had stopped. But as the sun set on June 28, 2025, a suffocating dread settled over her, whispering that the house wasn't done with her. The final horror was coming, and it would be worse than anything she'd faced. She'd kept the locket, Eleanor's silver heart with Samuel's faded photograph, as a talisman of hope. But that night in the motel, it burned against her skin. Searing her chest, she tore it off, gasping, and saw the inscription 2E, forever yours, S, glow red, then blacken, as if scorched from within. Her phone buzzed, displaying a photo she hadn't taken. Willow House's front door, wide open, the darkness inside pulsing like a heartbeat. The message beneath read, "Come back." Clara tried to call Mia and Jake, but her phone died, its screen cracking in her hand. The motel's lights flickered, and the air grew thick, reeking of wet earth and blood. She heard it, then a low, wet chuckle, not from the room, but inside her skull, slithering through her thoughts. "You broke my chains," the voice of the beneath hissed. "Now you're mine." The room's mirror shattered, and in its fragments, Clara saw not her face, but a writhing mass of eyes and teeth, clawing at the glass from the other side. She ran, stealing a bike from the motel lot and pedaling toward Willow House. She didn't know why, she only knew she had to face it, or it would follow her forever. The town was unnaturally silent, the streets empty, the stars blotted out by a sky like spilled ink. As she reached the house, its windows glowed with a sickly green light, and the willow tree's branches twisted, snapping like bones. The front door swung open, inviting her into a maw of darkness. Inside the house was no longer a house. The walls pulsed like flesh, oozing black ichor that burned where it touched her skin. The staircase spiraled upward into a void, and the air was alive with whispers, screams, and that relentless chuckle. Clara clutched the locket, her only anchor, and climbed, each step sinking into a floor that felt like rotting meat. In the attic, the heart of the horror waited. The room was a cavern now, its walls carved with the hollow kin symbols, glowing and bleeding. At its center stood a figure, not Thomas, not Eleanor, but something ancient, its form a grotesque patchwork of bone and shadow, its eyes pits of endless hunger. "You woke me," it growled, its voice shaking the house. "You spilled blood on my ground." Clara realized the truth, the rituals, Thomas's curse, her own digging, they'd all fed the beneath, strengthening it until it could break free. The creature lunged, its claws slicing her arm, the pain white. Clara stumbled, dropping the locket, which cracked open, spilling Samuel's photograph. A faint light bloomed from it, and Eleanor's voice, soft but fierce, echoed, "Fight it, Clara, for us." The light grew, forming two figures. Eleanor in her white dress, Samuel beside her, their hands clasped. Their love, pure and unbroken, pushed back the darkness, but the beneath roared, its form swelling, threatening to swallow them all. Clara's eyes fell on the rusted knife from Thomas's box. Lying in the corner where she'd left it, she dove. For it, the creature's claws grazing her back, tearing her shirt and skin. With a scream, she drove the knife into the floor, where the symbols glowed brightest. The blade sank deep, and the house shrieked, walls cracking, ichor spraying. Eleanor and Samuel's light flared, their figures merging into a radiant blaze that burned the creature's form, reducing it to ash. The attic collapsed inward, and Clara fell, the world dissolving into white dots. She woke in the backyard, dawn breaking over Black Hollow. Willow House was gone, reduced to a smoldering ruin, the willow tree charred but standing. The locket lay beside her, cold and dull, its photograph crumbled to dust. Her wounds throbbed, but she was alive. Sirens wailed in the distance. Jake and Father Daniel had called for help, having seen the house's eerie glow from town. Clara never returned to the site. She left Black Hollow, carrying scars and a story no one would believe. The town buried the truth, as it always had, but whispers persisted of a woman who'd faced the beneath and won, her courage fueled by a love that spanned centuries. Clara kept drawing, her sketches now of light, not shadow, but she never wore another locket. Some nights, when the wind howled, she'd hear a faint chuckle, a reminder that the beneath was weakened, not gone, and that some houses, like some loves, never truly let you go.